Today, American forces have boarded and seized control of a Venezuela-linked oil tanker in the North Atlantic. The vessel is Russian flagged, and tracking data shows that it is currently nearing the waters of Iceland. A little context for you on this tanker. It is part of a so-called shadow fleet that has carried oil for Venezuela, but also for Russia and for Iran, all of that in violation of American sanctions. And the US has been monitoring the vessel for some weeks now after it tried to evade the blockade around Venezuela. Important to say as well, we've just been getting word this afternoon that a second tanker has been seized today, this one in the Caribbean Sea. Well, Fraser Jackson is with me. He's our correspondent in Washington. Fraser, this is clearly a fast-moving story today. What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, a month after it tried for the first time, the US has now boarded and seized the second tanker linked to Venezuelan oil. This vessel, initially called the Bella 1, was believed to be heading towards Venezuela around a month ago when the US first tried to intercept it. It has since then changed its name to the Marinera and its flag from Guyana to Russia. Well, that tanker ultimately escaped that naval blockade that exists in the Caribbean at the moment and has been pursued by US ships ever since. Russia has also sent ships and a submarine to escort this vessel for the rest of its journey, but the US Coast Guard, it appears, managed to board the ship before they arrived. It's currently located between Iceland and the British Isles, around 200 or so miles to the southwest of Iceland, and the ship is accused of breaking these US sanctions and also shipping Iranian oil, but it has historically transported Venezuelan crude oil. Reports, though, saying that it's currently empty at the moment. Then also reports that another pre-dawn raid this morning taking place in the Caribbean. Another vessel there seized, which was called the MT Sophia, which was operating in international waters and conducting illicit activities in the Caribbean Sea. That, according to the US military. We've also heard from the head of the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who said the blockade of sanctioned and illicit Venezuelan oil remains in full effect anywhere in the world. This then clearly part of the US strategy to increase pressure on Venezuela. Their remaining oil tankers that they have are full and they can't pump any more oil because there's nowhere to put it effectively, meaning that they therefore can't sell it. So the US hoping to put a financial squeeze on Venezuela, which will of course bring them to the table and force them into the US's way of thinking. And there are already some signs that that is starting to bear some fruit.
Yeah, you talked about a squeeze on Venezuela. Expand a bit on that if you can, Fraser, because this does appear part, doesn't it, of a really rather aggressive push by the Trump administration to dictate the oil flow from Venezuela. It was earlier on in the programme that we were reporting that Trump says a deal has been struck with Caracas to export some $2 billion worth of Venezuelan crude to the US.
Yeah, at first, of course, it is believed that, the US used the rationale of a law enforcement operation to remove Maduro, but it's very quickly coming to sharp focus that oil is playing a significant role here. Donald Trump said just late on Tuesday evening that Venezuela will ship up to 50 million barrels of oil to the United States to be sold at by Trump at market value. That is a move that he says will benefit the people of the US and Venezuela, but we also got some fresh reporting from ABC recently that says that the Trump administration has now told Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, that the regime must meet the White House's demands before being allowed to pump more oil. And remember, there is currently a limit on how much they can pump because they've got those full tankers and nowhere to ship the oil. Now, the ABC is citing three people familiar with the plan in this reporting, and it goes like this. First, the country Venezuela is going to have to kick out China, Russia, Iran and Cuba from its oil exports and sever economic ties. Now, that is huge because, for example, China is responsible for around 67% of the oil bought from Venezuela. And then secondly, Venezuela must agree to partner exclusively with the US on oil production and favor America when selling heavy crude oil. This is, again, according to those three people who are being cited by ABC News. One of the sources saying that Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers in a private briefing on Monday that he believes the US can force Venezuela's hand because of the fact that its existing oil tankers are full. He's also telling lawmakers that the US estimates that Caracas only has a couple of weeks before it will become financially insolvent without the sale of its oil reserves. So therefore, this is a very immediate term problem for the Venezuelans, and the US government hoping that they can use that pressure to exert some control over the Venezuelan government, much like Donald Trump has said he's been controlling them for the last few days.
And Fraser, just a final thought for you, if I may. As we've been on air, there's been some reaction coming in from Moscow to the seizing of this oil tanker. We just have a line here from AFP, from the Newswire, saying that Moscow has slammed the American use of force against the Russian-flagged tanker. I mean, just your reflections then on perhaps how this might impact the already complex relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Well, the US is really going to have to walk a bit of a tightrope here, because I think it's going to come down to which foreign policy aspect they favor. Because, of course, remember, the US at the moment is still trying to get Russia to sign on to a ceasefire deal in Ukraine. And the Russians have kind of kept their cards close to their chest when it comes to their feelings on that deal. So any other outside influence that could upset the apple cart here could actually have a negative impact on those discussions in Ukraine. Now, of course, Donald Trump will be hoping that he can use what he calls the peace through strength approach, and that the threat of any kind of American firepower or might will cause the Russians ultimately to back down and to see things Donald Trump's way as well. That is a plan that he's used elsewhere across the world and in his own backyard in the Western Hemisphere. But whether Vladimir Putin is going to fall for that and is going to blink, I think is what we are waiting to see. But of course, Vladimir Putin believes that he can play Donald Trump better than anybody, and that has been a criticism of Donald Trump in the lead up to this ceasefire deal that is currently ongoing in Ukraine. So it's a very fragile situation. The US may be hoping to have its cake and eat it too, but the Russian reaction to this is going to be one to watch.